certain truths are never simply revealed, they are seized. Within contemporary culture, existing openly may cost careers, privacy, safety, and control over one's own physical body. Courts' headlines and camera lenses frequently dictate which identities become public property. Transitioning doesn't terminate struggle, it merely alters it. This series begins with a fundamental question. When truth carries a price, who determines what that cost will be? Caitlyn Jenner. Throughout much of her career, she achieved certainty. As a gold medalist and former reality television star, she understood that discipline, restraint, and silence were rewarded in American society. Long before she possessed the language or safety for her gender identity, privacy became a survival method. This balance collapsed in 2015 when Jenner officially came out during a televised interview with Diane Sawyer. The declaration ended years of rumors, but it also surrendered autonomy. Soon after, a polished, stylized magazine cover presented her transition as spectacle drawing praise alongside immediate scrutiny. Her image and self-expression became public property, measured against shifting standards of authenticity she did not establish. At the same time, unresolved tragedy complicated the moment. Earlier that year, Jenner was involved in a fatal vehicle collision that resulted in the death of Kim Howe, merging legal accountability with public discussion of her transition. The overlap ensured that identity could not exist without controversy. Jenner moved ahead, participating in media politics and public debate, even as support fractured. Visibility brought influence, but also intensified monitoring criticism and polarization. Over time, Jenner's journey revealed the limits of representation. Transitioning earned attention, but it did not remove consequence or ensure understanding. Her legacy remains unsettled, caught between personal bravery and public cost. Her personal experience highlights a difficult truth. When identity becomes public spectacle, freedom is restricted by relentless judgment, and truth, once released, can no longer be fully reclaimed. Andrea Pejic. Her professional journey was established on ambiguity well before it was defined by personal choice. Found as a youth after her family relocated to Australia, she entered fashion through an image that transitioned easily between masculine and feminine styles. Designers admired her androgyny, yet that acclaim relied on quietness. Her success demanded the strict management of facts, allowing the visual to be consumed while the individual stayed restricted. For years, uncertainty served as a professional asset. In 2014, Pejic favored alignment over permission. She openly identified as a transgender woman and underwent gender-affirming surgery, describing the move not as an overhaul, but as a finality. Industry observers anticipated decline, believing visibility would harm marketability. Instead, her work persisted. Pejic returned to top runways, obtained global campaigns, and achieved history as the initial openly transgender woman featured on the cover of GQ Portugal. Interest, however, did not diminish. Inquiries frequently shifted toward anatomy and surgery, threatening to minimize her career to a mere explanation. Pejic answered with composure, stressing discipline, professionalism, and skill over disclosure. She refused to display vulnerability for others' consumption, choosing stability instead. Over time, her consistent presence silently reshaped industry standards. Her story shows that structural change rarely comes via loudness alone. It occurs through persistence. By staying visible without losing control of her narrative, Andrea Pejic broadened the limits of style, showing that authenticity needs no spectacle and that lasting presence is as powerful as any news story. Elliot Page. He entered Hollywood as a youth, viewing performance as a shield rather than exposure. Fast acclaim came quickly, carrying intense demands regarding physique, voice, and gender role. Hollywood valued fragility on camera while demanding compliance behind it. For many years, Page handled this split, constructing a noted career while feeling a rising sense of internal disconnect. In 2014, he declared he was gay, an action that lessened social pressure but failed to fix the intense internal struggle impacting his psychological well-being. Keeping quiet stayed expensive, yet being seen felt unsafe. In December 2020, Page publicly identified as transgender, requesting to be called Elliot. This statement was concise and managed, yet its reach was worldwide. Support arrived alongside harsh observation that minimized identity into schedules and rumors. Page favored stability over hiding. He returned to professional work, set firm limits with the press, and wove his transition into Umbrella Academy without drama. In 2023, he published his memoir, Page Boy, providing a measured yet truthful story of fame, dysphoria, and survival. Instead of acting as a general advocate, Page talked carefully, focusing on his work and mental state instead of justifying himself. The outcome of his transition was alignment instead of reinvention. Professionally, his status lasted. Socially, his openness questioned beliefs about manhood, career length, and commercial value. Elliot Page's impact isn't based on confession, but on staying power. His journey shows the price of quiet, the danger of honesty, and the chance of moving on once balance replaces survival. Please share your thoughts on Elliot Page's story in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hunter Schafer. Her public visibility started well before her career in film or fashion, defined by a prominence she didn't entirely select. Raised in North Carolina, she discovered early that gender presentation brought consequences in settings where norms were strict and silently maintained. Art served as her sanctuary, a personal medium for feelings that couldn't yet be expressed safely. This privacy vanished during her adolescence when North Carolina enacted House Bill 2 limiting restroom use for transgender individuals. Schafer became a primary plaintiff in the lawsuit, inserting her identity into judicial files and national news before she could manage her own story. This exposure attracted focus without her consent, transforming her existence into a political debate instead of a private reality. When performance eventually brought her to international fame through Euphoria, the visibility changed but persisted. Audiences and journalists frequently emphasized her transgender status over her skills, equating her work with mere representation. Schafer reacted by seizing back authority. She helped write episodes, created unique projects, and rejected the pressure to justify herself upon request. Quietness, when intentional, turned into a type of power. Today, Schafer maintains a careful equilibrium between impact and privacy, pursuing her career in film, fashion, and art, while shielding her personal world. Her journey demonstrates that visibility lacking consent results in enduring effects, and that liberty is found not in perpetual exposure, but in the capacity to choose what stays hidden. Jessica Alvis. Her public narrative started as spectacle long before it was perceived as truth. Recognized for years as Rodrigo Alves, the human Ken doll, she was presented to viewers through extreme surgical change characterized as obsession, vanity, and excess. Media outlets and tabloids viewed her body as a curiosity, seldom questioning what internal need those modifications were trying to fulfill. Beneath the procedures was a profound disconnect that lacked the words to be expressed. Medical dangers increased as fame grew. Surgeons cautioned about tissue destruction and fatal risks. Nevertheless, public interest continued to encourage further change. In 2020, Alves officially identified as a transgender woman and began her life as Jessica. This statement cast years of alteration, not as mere showmanship, but as survival guided by confusion. Visibility increased, rather than diminished. Interest moved from spectacle toward scrutiny, with media focusing on her anatomy transition dates and validity. Alves refused to hide. She discussed regret fragility and the price of seeking validation through a physique that never felt right. Balance provided relief, yet it didn't remove the outcomes. Social judgment persisted now, shaped by standards of realism and femininity. Eventually, Alves took more authority over her story, deciding when to engage and when to step away. Her journey shows how public fixation can mask pain, and how acknowledgement often comes only after harm occurs. Jessica Alves remains a warning showing that transitioning doesn't ensure peace, yet it provides clarity after years of faking certainty for others. Laverne Cox. She was raised in Alabama within a cultural environment shaped by faith discipline and rigid expectations regarding gender. Early on, she learned that visibility could invite punishment, while silence offered a form of conditional safety. Performance became a structured outlet, allowing self-expression within boundaries she could successfully manage. Her professional breakthrough arrived with Orange is the New Black, where she portrayed Sophia Bursay with restraint, complexity, and deep humanity. This role did not rely on spectacle, yet national visibility followed immediately. In 2014, Cox appeared on the cover of Time magazine during what was framed as a cultural turning point, elevating her from actor to symbol. Attention brought opportunity, but it also brought distortion. Interviews increasingly shifted away from her craft toward physical anatomy trauma and constant explanation. Cox responded strategically, setting firm boundaries and redirecting the conversation back to dignity and her work. Advocacy became intentional rather than reactive, grounded in clarity instead of simple exposure. Over time, she expanded her influence as a producer, public speaker, and cultural commentator while continuing to act in film and television projects. Visibility did not shield her from backlash. With prominence came harassment, political hostility, and expectations of constant representation for her community. Cox resisted becoming a perpetual lesson for others. She chose when to speak out and when to protect herself. Today, Laverne Cox occupies a deliberate balance between public influence and personal restraint. Her legacy is not constant disclosure but controlled presence. She demonstrates that visibility, when governed by personal agency, can reshape cultural narratives without requiring the surrender of personal autonomy. Patricio Manuel. His narrative develops far from red carpets or fashion runways, rooted instead in discipline, repetition, and physical risk. Raised in California, boxing provided structure long before language existed for his gender identity. The ring valued focus over explanation, allowing Manuel to develop skill while delaying questions about belonging. Transitioning disturbed that delicate balance. Boxing remains strictly regulated, organized around categories that provide little room for bodies challenging expectation. As Manuel started his medical transition, licenses were challenged, opponents withdrew, and governing bodies subjected him to lengthy review. His right to compete became a matter of debate rather than merit. Manuel chose persistence over retreat, enduring delays, scrutiny, and public speculation to stay in the sport he dedicated his life to. In December 2018, he made history with his professional debut against Hugo Aguilar in California, winning by unanimous decision and becoming the initial openly transgender man to win a professional boxing match. The victory carried symbolic weight, but it did not settle controversy. Attention returned frequently to identity instead of technique, and securing future bouts proved difficult. Manuel continued training and speaking selectively, emphasizing that participation was not a political statement, but a right earned through preparation. His transition did not provide ease, but it provided alignment. Today, Patricio Manuel represents a quieter form of progress. His career shows how access is negotiated long after headlines fade and how inclusion in sports often requires patience as much as bravery. His legacy exists not in spectacle, but in persistence under pressure. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and drop a comment to share your thoughts.